Certify and Amplify webinar. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in if you're watching this a bit later. My name is Caroline Love. I use she, her pronouns. I've been with MCE for a little over 2 years. Currently, I'm in the position of a Strategic Initiatives Associate, and I work a lot with supplier diversity and also looking for grants. But today we're excited to speak to you specifically about supplier diversity. And first, we're going to give you a little bit of a run through on how this event's going to work. Next slide, please. As you got the notification, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be able to share the recording afterwards in case you have to step away for a moment. You'll notice that you're not able to have your video on, but at the end, if you'd like to ask a question, you can put those questions in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of the screen anytime throughout the webinar, and then we will answer those at the end. Or you can raise your hand and we'll invite you to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak aloud and ask any of our speakers a question. And yes, if you have any technical issues, you can put that in the Q&A box. You'll see the chat. We might be sending you a few messages, but if you have technical issues, you can put those in the Q&A or send an email to me and hopefully I'll see it. Next slide, please. If you would like closed captions, you can enable those at the bottom of your screen by clicking the Show Captions button. And again, let me know if you have any questions about that, if you're having issues. Next slide. Today, we will be starting with a little bit of a background about MCE. What are we as a community choice aggregator or a CCA, in case you're unfamiliar, and what opportunities do you have with MCE specifically? Then we'll be sharing Chef Stephanie Green will be presenting from the CPUC. Then we'll be featuring Dr. Vic Baker with Equitify and Wayne Gross with the California Department of General Services Small Business and Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise Certification. After that, we'll be answering your questions in the Q&A. And we have a short survey at the end that we'd love to have you spend a few minutes just before you log off to take. Next slide, please. MCE has been around since 2010, serving customers now in over 35 member communities in 4 counties. We serve all of Marin and Napa counties and almost all of Solano and Contra Costa counties. Next slide, please. We are responsible for procuring your energy. If you're in one of our member communities, you're automatically opted in. And if you'd like to explore a little bit more about your options, you can do that as well. So you automatically have now 100% for new homes, 100% renewable energy. So we're really proud to procure more renewable energy at affordable rates. And then we work with the investor-owned utility agency in our area, which in our case is PG&E, to deliver the power. So they still own the power lines. And just like other CCAs, community choice aggregators, we work throughout the state with our investor-owned utilities to deliver the power, more renewable energy at affordable rates. And then you, the customers, get to benefit from having elected a CCA or a community choice aggregator to join your to serve your community. And we have programs that we reinvest our customer ratepayer funds to. So those range from electrification to EV upgrades for low-income individuals. And if you'd like to learn more, we can share a little bit more about our website at the end to see all of those options that you have available. Next slide, please. In addition to MCE, there are 24 other CCAs in the state. MCE was the first, and now we're really excited to be serving over 11 million customers throughout the state. So it's getting, each time I give this webinar, it's a little bit more area that has a CCA. So if you're joining us from somewhere else in the state, you can see where you have a CCA. Even if you didn't know you had one, you likely do. Next slide, please. Supplier diversity is really important to MCE and all the other CCAs as well. We recently published our 2023 Supplier Diversity Report, which shares a little bit more about who we work with, who and what their certifications are. And you can check that out. I can provide a link in a bit. And although we're slightly limited in our role, we really value supporting our small and local businesses and want to provide them all the options they can to certify. And we always inform our business communities about the Clearinghouse with the CPUC via this webinar and information throughout the year. So we're always really excited to amplify different businesses that we do that have been certified in the report. And if you're tuning in now and you were in that report, thank you so much for that work. And we're excited to continue supporting you as you work with MCE. All right, next slide. If you want to see more opportunities that we have available at the moment, you can see you can visit our solicitations page, mcecleanenergy.org/solicitations. You'll see there's no open solicitations at the moment, so you can please just put a little bit more information about your business if you haven't already filled this out to get notified about upcoming solicitations. So you can fill in information about what type of business you are, and then we'll notify you if there's opportunities that align with what kind of business you are. And you can see current and future RFQs by visiting this page. And yeah, again, let me know if you have any questions about those options. Next slide, please. All right, so our first speaker, I'm really excited. We've always had speaker from the CPUC, but this is the first year we have the wonderful Stephanie Green, who's been with the CPUC for over a decade. And she oversees General Order 156, the Supplier Diversity Program, in the CPUC's executive division. In addition, she supervises the business and community outreach team and serves as the Commission's tribal liaison. She holds a master's in business administration, and she used to work in the private sector industries of telecommunications and technology. All right, thank you, Stephanie, and take it away.
Next slide, please. And hello, so as Caroline just said, I am from the California Public Utilities Commission. And for those of you who do not know what that is, I'll tell you a little bit about the commission. We are a state agency that regulate privately owned electric, natural gas, telecommunication, water, rail transit, and passenger transportation companies. So what does that mean? Basically, we're involved in your life, whether or not you know it, on every day. From an electricity perspective, we regulate PG&E, Edison, all the major electric companies, natural gas as well, companies like Southern California Gas, telecommunications. Everyone has some kind of broadband wireless plan. So Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Comcast, Cox, those are all companies that are under our jurisdiction. From a water perspective, companies like San Jose Water, Cal American Water, Golden State Water, Rail, Union Pacific, BNSF, Rail Transit, BART. BART is under our auspices. Passenger transportation, who's taking an Uber or a Lyft? Guess what? We regulate them. So Uber and Lyft. So as I said, our agency has broad oversight and a lot of industries that we're regulating, and we're really trying to ensure that the citizens of California, the residents, get safe, reliable service at reasonable rates. We try to protect consumers against fraud, and we're also promoting the health of California economy. So that's a little bit about the CPUC. Next slide, please. Now I want to tell you a little bit about the Supplier Diversity Program, which is some of the reason we're here today. In a nutshell, the program encourages the utilities and electric service providers, so utilities being all the companies I just mentioned, to do two things. One, they have to report on their performance for that year. And then they also have to include plans for how they're going to increase procurement from diverse firms. So it's backward looking in terms of they have to report their performance, and forward looking, they have to present a plan. So beside those companies that we talked about, the regulated utilities and electric service providers, the CCAs are also now a part of the program, and they have to submit plans for how they will increase procurement from small, local, and diverse businesses. And then they also have to submit a report on their performance from the previous year. And then in addition, the GO 156, which is our the regulation that establishes the program, encourages wholesale power generators, energy resource and storage companies to also adopt plans for increasing procurement. And the program has voluntary goals: 15% for minority, 5% from women-owned businesses, 1.5% for disabled veteran business enterprises. And then we now have a 1% goal for 2023 for the LGBT. And then next year, the LGBT goal will go to 1.5%, well, it will stay there. So collectively, I'm just going to call these diverse suppliers And again, that refers to women, minority, disabled, veteran, LGBT, and then also persons with disabilities. So that's our supplier diversity program. Next slide, please. Now, how do we implement a supplier diversity program? Well, that is under the auspices of the CPUC. And one of the main elements of the supplier diversity program is having a supplier clearinghouse. And that is under the direct oversight and supervision of the CPUC. And the clearinghouse is a database of certified firms. And the clearinghouse verifies women, minority, LGBT, and persons with disability enterprises status. It certifies that they are indeed diverse. Now, for the disabled veterans, they have to be certified by the Department of General Services. So for the vets, you go to DGS and then you get pulled into our supplier clearinghouse. So you will automatically get into the CPUC clearinghouse. So that's a little bit about the CPUC, and we have this certification so that we can be assured that the firms that these companies are doing business with are indeed diverse. So next slide, please, now that I've explained the clearinghouse. So since we just talked about certification and the clearinghouse, I want to tell you a little bit about the benefits of certification. You may be wondering, why should I go through that effort? Why get certified? Well, there's a few reasons. First, it gives you official recognition as being a diverse business. Many places do not accept self-certification. This certification really lets people know that you are truly indeed a diverse firm. It sets your firm apart in the marketplace. Just like if you were going for a job and you have a college degree and someone else says, it's not going to guarantee you get the job, but it does set you apart. Certification, same thing, it sets you apart. When you're looking at two vendors, that gives you a little bit of an edge, it makes you stand out, just sets you apart. Another thing that certification does is it puts you in this database that the CCAs, the utilities, and other entities are using to find vendors. So now you have a little more visibility. You're in a database that these entities are actively using to find vendors. So it is going to increase your visibility. In addition, the utilities and CCAs, in their annual reports that I referenced earlier, they have to utilize diverse firms from the CPUC clearinghouse to count that spend. So it gives you an advantage. If you're a certified firm in the database, that's a firm that these CCAs and utilities can use as a part of their reporting. So that's another advantage. And finally, you'll get some event and marketing materials being in the database. Many of the entities have events like today, the Certify Amplify. By being in the database, you'll hear about these events, you'll hear about bid opportunities, you can hear about educational workshops, forums. So there's different opportunities and events that workshops that you'll hear about by being in the clearinghouse database. So that's another advantage to being certified. You will hear about these opportunities. So those are just some of the benefits you should consider as a potential vendor. Next slide, please. The CPUC clearinghouse, how do you get certified? Well, your business needs to be 51% owned by the woman, minority, LGBT, or disabled person. And it has to have management and day-to-day operations under the control of that diverse entity. So it's ownership, management, and control that we look at when we're deciding whether you're eligible for certification. I will note that certification is free. Applications are processed within 4 weeks. Right now, we're running at about a week. So it's a pretty smooth, quick process. And certification is good for 3 years. So once you're certified, you won't have to get renewed for another 3 years. Next slide, please. So again, the CPUC certifies women-owned firms, minority-owned firms, LGBT-owned firms, and persons with disability. The additional programs we have are DVBE, where you get certified by DGS. And we also have the 8A SBA program, where you're getting certified by the federal government SBA program. Next slide. So when you're getting certified, what are some of the things, what are the types of applications? We have your standard application, which any firm can utilize. We have a fast track application. If you are a California domiciled firm with 3.5 million or less, we have a fast track or faster application you can utilize. We have the re-verification or a renewal application. And then we have our comparable agency application. So if you are currently certified with WBENC, the Women Business Enterprise National Council, NMSDC, the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, or the NGLCC, the National Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, or Disability IN, you can come to the Clearinghouse, use that comparable agency verification app, and it's a faster, simpler, quicker application. So those are the application types for you to be aware of when you go to the Clearinghouse to get certified. Next slide. And when you apply, what are the few things you're going to have to give in terms of documents? Well, there is an affidavit you have to sign. You will have to provide proof of your ethnicity or your LGBT gender or disability status. So for example, your birth certificate can prove your gender, ethnicity. 1 year, your most recent year of that tax returns. They do look for evidence of your capital contribution into the corporation, a bank signature information, your resumes of your leadership or the owners, corporation documents, and then of course, if you're going for comparable agency verification, you'll have to submit those WBENC, NMSDC, or NGLC, or Disability IN certifications. Next slide. Where do you find the Clearinghouse? Well, you're going to go to www.thesupplierclearinghouse.com. We have an email at info@thesupplierclearinghouse.com. There's a little picture of the website, so you'll recognize it. It's got the picture of the sky, the city skyline. So that's what you're going to find when you go to that website, and you're going to click on the apply button. 800-359-7998 is our email, as our telephone number. Next slide. And finally, I'm going to just leave you with a few little quick recommendations. Please make sure you register your company in any of the CCAs or utilities website portals. That's one of the ways they're going to find the vendor and do business with you. So if you're really serious about doing business with them, go ahead and register in their portal, vendor portal, supplier portal. Always keep your contact information up to date and current. Make sure you have a valid and a good website. One of the first things they do is they see your vendor status. They're going to go and look and check you out. They're going to go to your website. So please have a good website. Take advantage of all the resources available, CCA's vendor portal, go to some of the chambers, any resources that are available, utilize them. Do research on that companies, the utilities or CCAs you're interested in before you try and do business with them. I want to do your homework. Make sure that you partner with other businesses. Sometimes you can get advantages to partnering. Together, you might be big enough to go after that contract. Attend networking events. It's good to expand your network. That's how you're going to know about opportunities and expand your network. And read the utilities and CCA's annual reports. You can learn a lot about their opportunities. And I'm going to wrap up by saying, this is next slide. I think it's my contact information. Go ahead and reach out to me, Stephanie Green at the cpuc.ca.gov. And with that, I think I'm just sneaking on my time. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good one. And I'm going to hand it off to the next speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for bringing all of your wisdom. Next up, we can go to the next slide. We have Dr. Vic Baker, who, like Stephanie, is joining us at this event for the first time. He holds an MBA and serves as the president and CPO of Equitify, a coaching, consulting, and training company that offers leadership, organizational development, and DEI BA, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility services to promote a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workspace while maximizing performance. Vic has personally gone through the certification process himself, which we'll talk more about, and he's helped dozens of other businesses through this process, so we're really lucky to have him. And before founding Equitify, he worked for over 25 years in the utility industry, including at San Diego Gas and Electric and PG&E. All right, thank you, Vic. We'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And great job, Stephanie. Thank you for that. It's important that we hear from Stephanie in the CPUC regarding certification. So I'm going to talk to you about certifying and diversifying and some of the benefits that come around with it. So I'm happy to have you. Our state, as you all know, is increasingly becoming diverse. I mean, it's crucial that companies recognize the value of minority certification and DBE certification and actively seek out opportunities to become certified. So in this presentation, what I want to do is explore what DBE certification is, elaborate on what Stephanie had talked about, why it matters, and how businesses, of course, can obtain it with different certification agencies. But most importantly, the benefits of certification for you as a supplier, for the company, and for the end user when we're talking about diversifying our supplier base. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you have a clear understanding and maybe have influence into ensuring that you do go get certified and sign up for these opportunities that will present itself. So next slide. A little bit about myself. Again, Dr. Vic Baker, as you heard, my career kind of spans decades. And I've worked with many diverse companies, and I like to call myself a recovering engineer. And if you ever worked with an engineer, you would understand what that means. I was an engineer. That's how I started in the industry. Today, I'm a doctor. I'm a certified executive coach, certified equity and inclusion leadership practitioner. And what I've done over the last couple of years is kind of combine my practical experience with ongoing and very relevant research. So now I teach and I train and I coach and I consult in leadership. I consult in organizational development, diversity, and performance for all companies, all different sizes. But most importantly for today webinar is my career. I've been the procurer of products and services for large companies. I've led supplier diversity initiatives, been the middle person with diverse suppliers and the company itself. And I've increased the number of businesses that these companies work with, but not just increased the number of businesses, but also increased the dollar amount of spend with diverse businesses. And in doing so, really help companies successfully integrate and most importantly, sustain themselves in the energy sector. Lastly, I myself am a certified diverse business, as you were told, and because of my certification, I'm now able to compete in arenas traditionally far-reaching for me at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. Next slide. Before we begin, it's only appropriate in this conversation to give honor to the late and great Gwen Moore. She is responsible for implementing what we now know as supplier diversity. She witnessed firsthand the racial and gender economic gaps that persisted in her district in California. Assemblywoman Moore was kind of a trailblazer. She was a trailblazer, excuse me. She was the author of General Order 156 that sets the standard for the country when it comes to supply diversity. And now, today, and as Stephanie represents the California Public Utilities Commission, you've seen that they've established procedures and through the utilities and communication companies, and now they're able to report on their supplier diversity status and set targets and goals. I will use the word targets for their procurement with respect to supplier diversity. She not only understood the importance of closing economic gaps, but she also understood the value of supplier diversity to the utilities and communications companies themselves. So while there's a value for us as diverse suppliers, that value, there's also a value for businesses to do work for us. And it takes suppliers, diverse suppliers, to really reach diverse customers. And I'm sure you recognize that. And some of the recent failures that are in the world, and I'll just give you a few, and I talk to my classes as I teach supplier diversity and diversity to college students and MBA students. Some of the recent failures, if you ever saw the Dove soaps and body positive packaging, where the Black woman turns into a white woman after using the soap, that gives you an idea, suggesting that the idea of clean is being white. That was a failure. That was a big failure. The Pepsi and the Black Lives Matter movement, when Kendall Jenner walked through the protest and offered the officer a Pepsi, suggesting that Pepsi alone is the answer to all our racial unrest, right? Or even when the Wells Fargo CEO, there's a very limited pool of Black talent to recruit from. And we all know that those things aren't true, but I don't think these tragedies and negative hits to the brand, and eventually it hit the bottom line, and the reports show that it really hit the bottom line for these companies. The owners would have contracted with ethnically diverse suppliers. I think somebody would have raised their hand. Diverse marketing firms in the first two instances, I think, would have raised their hand. And of course, a talent acquisition company in the last instance with Wells Fargo would have raised their hand and said, no, this is the case, right? And this is where we can find diverse individuals who not only meet, but exceed qualifications to be in those certain positions. So diverse suppliers in generally show up with a different lens and a different touch to any of the segmented communities that we're talking about. Our customer base in California, again, is diverse. I give you a real life situation. Just happened to be just recently. Omar Raskin with the city of Richmond is really pushing solar in undeserved communities in Richmond. Now that activity requires sales, it requires marketing, it requires construction. And then I think of Roderick James, the CEO of a sales and marketing firm, whose customers include Salesforce, American Express, and Uber, who also understands that community has been successfully, understands the community and has been successfully developing strategies that integrate into those communities. So in order to achieve maximum results in a company who understands the community, perhaps comes from the community and hires from the community, would be likely the best option to work with someone like Omar Raskin with the city of Richmond. I'm putting those two together. Recognizing that also that diverse suppliers do not mean small businesses. So supplier diversity benefits the company, the supplier, and the customer at the very end of the day. It helps with everyone's bottom line. Next slide. So I won't spend too much time in this. We already talked about what DBE certification is. Really officially recognizing diverse businesses. But why does it matter? Because of Gwen Moore's policies that she put in place, the companies encouraged and incentivized to broaden their traditional methods of procurement. Kind of leveling the playing field and making it more accessible for historically underrepresented groups to compete. And this is what Stephanie said, is competition. It puts you in the game. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it does put you in the game. Due to both implicit and explicit biases, and we can go into have Furcher talk about that, many underrepresented groups were disallowed from competing historically, right? So I've been personally a witness to initiatives intent to minimize the involvement of DBEs just in leading DBE groups and having to work internally with some of our internal buyers. Things like over-exhausting bid requirements, insurance, on-the-job scrutiny, over-scrutiny on the job, project creep, where you're increasing the amount of work and don't expect to pay the supplier, crazy payment terms and late payment terms. Today, the access afforded to DBE companies through policy come through opportunities to ensure fair and just treatment, where companies and DBEs can ensure their reputation is credible. So at every level of my experience, when given opportunity to new DBE firms, they tend to win the bids and they tend to outperform the incumbent. And that's just the reality. So next slide, please. So at the state, California leads this effort. CPUC Clearinghouse was the first certification agency of its kind. Today, there are various certification agencies. Stephanie spoke about that. NMSDC, the California Small Business Certification. You have the Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, WeBank, National Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Many of these are certification agencies. And what I love is that over these years since Gwen Moore started this, that they're reciprocal. And she and Stephanie talked about the reciprocal agencies and how we talk to one another now, and they don't make you do this over and over and over again with different agencies. So I love that about it. So if you register with one, you can likely get registered with another. And you only have to do the process one time. Next slide, please. So quickly, some of the requirements, of course, we talked a little bit about the things that we need. Specific requirements vary depending on the type of certification you're seeking. But think about this. Think about what you're seeking certification for. So you're going to need proof of citizenship. You're going to need legal residency. You're going to need birth certificates. You're going to need your veteran disability letters. These are items that you're going to have to possess. But you're also a business. Let's remember that. So we expect you to have what it takes to be a business. Your certificates of incorporation, your office leases, whose name is on a lease, who's signing the checks. Ensure you have all the necessary documents before you submit those applications. Additionally, what's helpful is to work with a consultant or maybe an advisor who has the experience certification progress and can guide you through the steps. Certify and Amplify. I mentioned Roderick Jefferson, for whom already doing well for himself, but Equitify is helping Roderick get certified to expand his pool of potential clients who see value in diverse suppliers. So wouldn't it be great if Omar Raskin with the city of Richmond utilized Roderick Jefferson and Roderick Jefferson's company to create that sales strategy to implementing solar to underrepresented communities? I think that would be great. And that's what this seminar is about, certifying and amplifying. So how do you choose? If you're early in the process of business development and there is no immediate need for certification, I would suggest you find a compelling certification for your status. Okay. For your consideration, the least represented groups of businesses include at this moment, Native American, African American, disabled veteran. If you fit those, I will look for certification in those areas immediately. If a company reaches out to you for your products and services, this is strategy number 2. In order to meet their goals, I would apply with the certification agency they utilize in accounting for their goals. So most of the time, you can't go wrong with certifying with the CPUC, probably largely because there's California based. But if you want to go out and expand beyond California, these other certifications really do help you. So next slide and last slide. So in conclusion, kind of minority certification is an essential tool for California businesses. Any business looking to thrive in an increasingly diverse marketplace is essential. So by becoming certified, companies can gain access to new opportunities, build valuable relationships, and enhance their reputation and credibility. If you haven't already pursued certification, I suggest you do. With the right guidance and support, the process can be straightforward and rewarding. And lastly, as you take advantage of this great opportunity to compete on a level playing field, I need you also, and this is what I encourage you to do, to please recognize the importance of diversifying your own supplier base with certified businesses. Certify and amplify. So this is my team that you see on the screen. Most of my suppliers are certified DBEs, including my bookkeeper, my accountant, my IT support firm. And just as an example, and that is a list of my certifications as well that I have, both at the federal level and at the state level, and minority status as well. So you can see that I talk the talk and I also walk the walk. So that's what I have for you today. I thank you for allowing me to share my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vic. And yeah, we appreciate you sharing so many of those specific examples and your experience as well, and your wealth of knowledge. If you have questions for Vic or Stephanie, or you have some that come up when Wayne is speaking in a moment, please remember to drop those in the Q&A. All right, next up, we have our last speaker. If you can go to the next slide, please, who is Wayne Gross, a business outreach liaison for the Office of Small Business and Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, or DVBE services at California's Department of General Services. This is tasked with certifying all small businesses and DVBEs in the state. Wayne has over 40 years of customer service experience, starting from his early days as a United States Air Force captain, and he holds a master's in business management. All right, thanks, Wayne.
Thank you. Next slide. I'm a business outreach liaison. Here is my information: phone number 279-946-8387, and my email wayne.d.gross@dgs.ca.gov. Next slide. An overview. We're going to talk about the Small Business and Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise Program, the benefits, the eligibility, our website, Cali Procure, our emergency registry, and commercially useful function. Next slide. Okay, we have two goals, a small business goal of 25% and a DVBE goal of 3%. Last year, we almost made the 25%. We did 24.83, and we exceeded the 3%. I believe it was 3.5%. So we are on the rise. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. I think we can find a place for you, either as a small business and or a DVBE. Next slide. So here are, again, are our numbers. Oh, we did 4.82 on that DVBE. So we're doing good. It's like a little piece of that $3.38 billion. Okay, next slide. So we have three certifications. We have small business for the purposes of public works, and disabled veteran business enterprise. Next slide. We have a 5% bid preference for small businesses, a up to 5% incentive for DVBEs. Both of those have to be written into the formal solicitation. We have exclusive contract opportunities. You get prompt payment if you are certified small business, and you turn in an undisputed invoice. You'll get paid within 45 days. We have reciprocity partners who honor the small business and or DVBE, and you get to work with prime contractors. Next slide. The requirements are very simple. Independently owned and operated, not dominant in the field. Principal office is located in California, 100 or fewer employees, and gross annual receipts cannot exceed an average of 16 million over the last 3 years. And if you're a manufacturer, it's 100 or fewer employees, and there's no GARS cap. Next slide. For the public works, the same four requirements are the same. The differences are in the number of employees. It's 200 employees, and the gross annual receipts are less than 37 million over the last 3 tax years. Now, if you are in public works, but you are small, under the 100 employees and the 16 million, don't get this public works. This is exclusively for public works, where the small business certification, if you sell stuff or whatever, you will be included in that. Next slide. Here again, as I just said, just get one of the certifications. You don't need both. Next slide. DVBE, you have to be at least 10% service disabled, own at least 51% of the company as the DVBE. It's 100% if you are an LLC. The veterans must live in California, and you must be able to manage and operate your company as the DVBE. And headquarters is here in the United States. Next slide. caliprocure.ca.gov is our the link that you need to get to our certification program. Next slide. You register your business, you apply for certification, you find solicitations and contacts, notifications, you appear in searches by state buyers, you can post an ad for free, you have access to public procurement information, you can get training, and it's all at no cost. It's free. And don't let anyone try and say, hey, for $500, I'll get you certified. It's all free. Next slide. This is our website. And if you go up to the top right, log in, register, click it. Next slide. You'll notice at the bottom left, it says new bidder registration. You get registered. Next slide. And then when you get registered and certified, we have a supplier diversity information page. It's all voluntary, and we're just trying to collect data. for the diversity community. Next slide. Again, we're logged in. Go ahead. And once you establish your username and password, you put it in and log in. Next slide. And it has here, no certification record, get started, apply for certification. Okay, next slide. And then it takes you to this link. Next slide. Okay, you're going to be putting in keywords. These are words of goods and services of what you do. We want this giant list. We want the singular, not the plural, and you don't have to repeat words. Next slide. The next slide is about our United Nations specialty codes, not to be confused with the federal NAICS codes, the North America Industry Classification System. And there are 4 levels, and we always use level 3, which ends in the 8-digit code ends in 00, or level 4, the 8-digit specific codes. Next slide. Finding contract opportunities. This is our contracts register. Next slide. You always want to be logged in because there's information that only shows up if you are logged in. Next slide. You click on Get Start Search right in the middle of the website. Next slide. And you can do a search either by event name, that would be a keyword, event ID, you know what the identifier is, you got an email, or by department. Next slide. And you can do an advanced search by either UNSPSC codes, service areas, and contract license types. Next slide. And this is an example of the different solicitations that you'd see. Next slide. And this is what a solicitation looks like. Basically, there are 3 columns on the top, gives you general information. In the middle, it gives you a start and a stop time, a date and time. You want to make sure that the receiving agency gets that information before the time and date. And then on the right side, you can view the package. You can post a vendor ad here, or you can view the different ads that are already posted. In the middle, you have the UNSPSC codes that are being used, and if there's contract information. Next slide. Research past purchases. This is what we call skippers. Next slide. And it's a great tool for marketing. You can find out what agencies are buying what you're trying to sell. Next slide. And we go to the bottom left on Cali Procure, find public procurement information. Next slide. And the second one says the skippers. We click on it. Next slide. And on the top, you either can do a description, a keyword, or you could do an advanced search and you'll pull up the UNSPSC codes, and you can put in multiple codes and do a search. And this gives you great information of the department, how much the solicitation was for, and the buyer's information. Next slide. The advocates. Any state agency that procures $100,000 or more must have an advocate. These are your new best friends. Next slide. And they are there to help you. Next slide. And finding training and resources, the bottom right, click it. And we go down to the 5th heading. Second bullet is the advocate list. Next slide. Download the directory. Next slide. And here is the Excel spreadsheet of all of the advocates, 255 lines of information. And I'm on this list because I am an advocate, but I'm here to help you get certified. Next slide. Our emergency registry, because of COVID and the fires, we created this emergency registry. It is divorced from Cali Procure. It's a separate database. Next slide. And we have over 30 different categories that if you can do an emergency, and we're talking about doing it today, not 3 weeks from now, okay? Next slide. This is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. You need your certification number, the emergency categories, a description of your products and services, your business address, and your contact information, both primary and emergency after hours. It's that simple. You hit submit, and then hopefully by the close of that day, you will get congratulations, you are in the database. Next slide. Okay, sell to the state. Next slide. And here is the emergency contract information. Click on it. Okay, finally, we have our commercially useful function. These are the requirements. You want to make sure that you can do a distinct element of the work, perform, manage, and supervise the work, perform work that is normal for the firm's business, negotiate price, determining quality and quantity, ordering, installing, and making payment, and not subcontracting a portion of the work. Okay, next slide. This is what it's not. Being used as a pass-through, not being able to perform the work, and no longer used to provide the services. Next slide. So we have resources, the Small Business Development Centers for new businesses, the Apex Accelerators, who are for established businesses, and SCORE for new businesses. Next slide. Here's all the stuff we talked about today: the program, the eligibility, the benefits, Cali Procure, the emergency registry, and commercially useful function. Next slide. If you want to get linked in to us, there's the link you can go to. Next slide. And if you want to schedule a conversation with us, you can do the QR code and schedule. Next slide. Thank you for participating. Next slide. And there's my information one last time. Thank you. Back.
Thanks, Wayne. Thank you very much. All right, we can go to the next slide now. Wayne always is able to speed through those many slides, so thank you very much. And if you missed any of that, you can see those in the follow-up packet afterwards. All right, so we've been getting some questions in the Q&A, which we will continue addressing via chat, and then also we'll elaborate more right now. So yeah, if you'd like to raise your hand, now's a good time. If you'd like to elaborate on your question or speak more aloud, and yeah, we'll just get into one that was already answered about if you're a new company just formed in 2023 and don't have a year of completed tax returns, can we still apply? And yes, you can. And Vic, would you be able to speak a little bit more about businesses that meet multiple criteria and if they should apply for both certifications?
Yes. So I think I wrote an answer. It kind of depends, but if you're doing business in California, I suggest you always go with the CPUC. CPUC, the certifications across the board. So it can do women's certification, women-owned business, but it can do minority status, disabled veteran status, LGBTQ status, all in one. Whereas the segmented ones will do just their segment. So WeBank will just do women. NMSDC would just do minority. The GLCC would just do gay, lesbian as certification. So I'd always start there. The information you're going to need can likely be reciprocated with the other agencies. And if not truly reciprocated, the information that you have already provided Stephanie's team is the same information they're going to ask for anyway. So you only really have to do it one time with maybe some augmentation when you're doing it. Now, this is what I will say when we request if you meet multiple criteria, I suggest you go with the one that has the least amount of, or the one that's needs the bigger increase. So I mentioned in my presentation, there's not many Native American owned businesses out there. It's just not, the numbers are not there. The African American owned business, many of the suppliers they're just not showing up in the numbers. So I would recommend doing that first, getting those certifications. But again, CPUC does them all, whereas you can also do that, especially if you're going to go outside the state of California. We have a client in New Jersey. We were with NMSDC as certified minority. They were that certification agency at the state of New Jersey. They were able to use the NMSDC to get me certified with the state of New Jersey. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, thanks. And again, if you still have follow-up questions, feel free to, I'll drop our emails in a second. Stephanie, if you'd like to add on to any of this, or
yes, yeah, I just, I think I accidentally thought I answered, but yes, nonprofits can absolutely apply. And there was a capital contributions, that's really goes to ownership. What money did you put in to establish yourself as owner of the company? So what was your capital contribution? What is the monetary amount you used to start or form the company or the LLC? So that's what that capital contribution is really getting at, that ownership. What funds did you contribute or capital? And I think those were the ones. Oh, how are SIC codes and NAS codes used? SIC codes and NAS codes are really what you're going to use to define your firm. So in other words, companies are going to find you based on your NAS codes, SIC codes, and your keywords. So when you apply, it's going to ask you, what does your company do? What's SIC codes, NAS codes? And then it's going to also ask you for keywords. So that's how it's used. It's not used in terms of verifying whether or not you should get certified, but it's used for you to set up your sort of profile, vendor profile. So I hope that answered that question.
All right, thanks. And feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to elaborate. We want to make sure we get to the folks that do have their hand raised. So I'm going to go ahead and allow Suhal. Please correct me if your name is pronounced differently, but please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Is it morning time already? Yep, no, not quite. So good morning, everybody. So hey, thanks for your presentation. Definitely learned a lot as a young entrepreneur trying to do work inside of California. My question that I have is generally about data that can be assessed, that kind of looks into the relationship between California state agencies and then the vendors, prime or subcontractors that they work with. I'm mindful of SAM.gov's analytical tool that they have that allows individuals to explore the different federal agencies and who has been awarded as prime contractors. And so that's for general question for DGS, if that's on Cal Procure, or if the CPUC has anything in their clearinghouse that speaks to that, or perhaps if there's any private resources that Dr. Baker can speak to. That's period.
You want to go first and I can go, and then Vic? And someone please turn off your background. Someone has their audio on. Okay.
Stephanie, yeah, do you want to go first?
Oh, okay, sure. Clearinghouse, all the utilities do annual reports. In those annual reports, they highlight their spend as well as vendors they use, the types of spend they have, so you can get a lot of that data. We also do an annual report to the legislature that highlights categories of spend, the amount of spend. So that gets to a lot of the data that you're referring to. So two different sources that I refer you to.
And so, excuse me, but what was the second part of the question you wanted me to answer?
Yeah, Dr. Baker, that was just whether or not you can speak to any resources that you're aware of on the private side of the house that allows, just as Ms. Green spoke to, looking at historical data from state agencies and the vendors that were awarded the different contracts. And thank you, Ms. Green, for that. That is exactly what I was asking about from your perspective.
Right. So it's interesting you asked that. CPUC is unique because they require these agencies, the communication utilities, to promote, to send in information. Outside of that is voluntary for a company to do that. Trying to find that information is hit or miss, I'm gonna be honest with you. But this is what I will say. Those companies who do offer that voluntarily are companies who wish to have an eye and wish to do work and wish to do business with DBE businesses. The state of California, any federal agency, any state agency will likely have their numbers because they produce and have an initiative around it, at least the small business portion of it, not necessarily the minority status. And so it's hit or miss on the private sector because it's all voluntary.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Wayne, I
Wayne.
saw you had your hand up for a
Yes.
while. Just want to, go ahead.
Okay, couple things. Number one, from the state point of view, I mentioned skippers, which are all of the completed contracts, go all the way back to December 15th, 2015. And if you go to our website, dgs.ca.gov, and put in dashboards, we have 6 different dashboards that show different things that will help you in researching, different products, the different companies, the different agencies that are buying whatever. And I believe each one of the dashboards gives like the top 30 companies for whatever you're looking for. It's quite extensive.
Appreciate that context. Also wanted to highlight some of the questions about how you can stand out as a prospective supplier once you're certified. So just as answering that last question, as a reminder, MCE will highlight all of our certified businesses in our annual report, which comes out in February. So if you can do that by the end of the year, then we'll include you in next year's. Thank you everyone for coming. I realize it's noon. We wanted to have everyone fill out this survey that I'm just dropping in the chat. Please do fill that out, and you can put your email there if you'd like us to reach out with any additional information or if you have any other questions. And we'll also be following up with all of the presenters' contact information. And yeah, we'd really appreciate you filling out the survey. If you don't have anything right after this during your lunch, we really appreciate you tuning in. And yes, I hope you have a great day. We're going to stay on the line just to answer any questions that remain from the survey, but if not, thanks again.